Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus, come down out of that tree. The Lord desires to have dinner at your house tonight. Elder R.W. Davis with you here today. And we're going to be coming out of Luke chapter 19, starting at verse 1 through verse 10. And we're talking about Zacchaeus, the tax collector, the publican. And starting at verse 1, and it reads, And Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, which was the chief among the publicans, and he was rich. Verse 3, and he sought to see Jesus, who he was, and could not for the press, because he was little in stature. Verse 4, and he ran before, and he climbed up in the sycamore tree to see him, for he was to pass that way. Verse 5, and when Jesus came to the place, he looked up, and he saw him, and he said unto him, Zacchaeus, make haste, and come down, for today I must abide at thy house. The Lord must abide at thy house today. Verse 6, and he made haste, and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all murmured, saying that he was gone to be guest with a man that is a sinner. Isn't that just like folk around you? You're gone to be guest with a man who is a known sinner. Verse 8, and Zacchaeus stood and said unto the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have taken anything from any man by false accusation, I restore him fourfold. And Jesus said unto him, This day is salvation come to this house. For so much also is a son of Abraham. Last verse, verse 10. For the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost. So I want to speak from a topic today. How do you see yourself? How do you see yourself? Now, I want you to understand that sometimes we struggle with how we see ourselves. We struggle with our identity. We struggle sometimes with where we were born. You know, they said no good thing cometh out of Nazareth. So sometimes we struggle with where we were born, where we went to school. You know, it may not have been the best school. So people talk about where you went to school. But what I want you to see is that it really takes a while for you to see yourself. I don't know if you ever remember being a little young toddler, and you know, the little girl, she mimics mama and daddy. The little boy, he mimics daddy and mama, because that's what he sees. It's not until he really grows up and that he really starts to see himself. And so, just like us, we don't really see ourselves until we see our reflection. And you can't see yourself straight on. Now, I'm looking straight on at you right now, and I can't see myself. So I can't see myself. I only see myself when I see a reflection of myself. So mankind is God's reflection. We are all made in his image after his reflection. And so earth is heaven's reflection. That's why the kingdoms of the earth will become God's kingdom. Matthew 6:10 says it this way. Matthew 6:10, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And then if you go to 1 John chapter 3, verse 2, it says it this way. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doeth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. John 1:3-2. So it's hard now to be like anything you cannot see spiritually. I'm going to say that again. It's hard to be like anything you can't see spiritually. So Zacchaeus, he had some obstacles he had to overcome. First of all, he had to overcome the crowd. The crowd. And you're going to have to overcome the crowd. The very people around you may be obstructing your view of Christ. Have you ever thought about that? That crowd around you may be obstructing your view of Christ. Zacchaeus had to deal with some physical limitations also. And the opinion of the crowd, he knew folk didn't like him. Why? He was a tax collector. You don't like tax collectors right now. I know you don't, because sometimes I don't either. You know, they impose these things upon us and we don't really like them. And so people didn't like him because he was a tax collector. So don't let other people come between you and Jesus. Don't do it. Now, if you allow someone to come between you and Jesus, then guess what? You are closer to them than you are to Jesus Christ, because you allowed them to come in between your relationship. So here's another clue. Don't follow the crowd looking for Jesus. Don't do it. For oftentimes, I'm going to tell you why, the majority is wrong. They can lead you to destruction. The majority is not always right. You have to understand that. So get this, really get this. Distraction, and there are many, is really the destruction of your dream in slow motion. It's the destruction of your dream in slow motion. Because what? The enemy comes to distract you. So also remember, the devil will send someone in the crowd just to distract you. Just to throw you off course, throw you off key, throw you off balance. He'll send someone in the crowd just to distract you. The second thing Zacchaeus had to deal with was his short stature. He was a short man. And so I want you to see this. He couldn't change his stature, but he could change his position. Which means what? When he changed his position, he can change his perspective. So don't let the way you were born become a hindrance to you. He couldn't help. He couldn't help. He was short. Couldn't help who he was born to. He couldn't help anything. But listen to this. You can change. Change what you can. Change what you can. You can change what you can. You can do that. Learn to get over what people think about you. Oh my goodness. Now that's a hard one, isn't it? Because we went, oh, what do people think about us? This and that. But you're going to have to get over about what people think about you to succeed with Jesus Christ. So remember the 12 spies sent out in Numbers 13. When they saw the promised land and the people that dwelt there, they had an inferiority complex that hindered them. They saw themselves as grasshoppers amongst giants. And so, how do you see yourself today? Do you see yourself as a grasshopper amongst giants? Or do you see yourself wonderfully made the way God has made you to be successful and succeed? So Zacchaeus wasn't just a tax collector now. And I want you to understand this. He was a leader. He was a chief. A leader knows the way. A leader goes the way. And a leader shows the way. So a leader doesn't just go with the crowd. He goes above the crowd. And today, I want you to rise above the crowd. I want you to be a leader with Jesus Christ. Your thinking will take you to another level. That's why you got to stop having stinking thinking, because your thinking is going to take you to another level. Let me remind you that David did not kill the giant because of the way he fought. He killed the giant because of the way he thought. And so leaders think differently. Notice in verse 4, It talks about the way Zacchaeus ran ahead. He ran ahead. Listen, don't run without thinking. Now, and I'm going to admit sometimes I do that. Sometimes I run to the store and I do this and I do that and I don't think about everything I need. And so I ran without thinking. You get an idea, you take off running only to fail because why? Because you didn't think it all the way through. I'll tell you a story about I was fixing the bathroom sink one night and I must have made 6 trips to the store trying to get that right part because I wasn't thinking. And so I made, before I knew it, it was midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning before I finished fooling with this sink. And my wife had tried to tell me way earlier that night, but I was running without thinking. And so it cost me many, many hours. And so stop running without thinking it through. Failure followed those who failed to follow through. Now, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, by all means, do it. Don't be one of those people who say something and people say, well, we'll see them in about 3 hours. They gave you a certain time. You told them you'll be there at 10. And they said, well, we'll see them at 1. Because they know your MO. They know you're known for being late. You're known for being 2 or 3 hours behind whatever time you told. So listen to me. Failure follows those who fail to follow through. If you say something, by all means, try your best to do it. Take time to think before you run into business. That's a word for some of y'all out there. You see, you running into business because you say, oh, that's my boo. I'm going to run into business and invest. You better think about what you're doing before you run into business. Even though it may be your friend, it may be your boo, may be your brother. You better think about it before you run into business. Notice in verse 5, Jesus begins to talk to Zacchaeus now. Because why? He changed his position. You see, if he were still in the crowd, Jesus would never have seen him. Why? Because he was so short. He would have got lost in the crowd. But because he changes his position, a conversation starts to pursue. Jesus looks up and he says, Zacchaeus, come down, come down. I must abide at your house tonight. Conversation is the birthplace for change. Now, I don't know about you, but I want you to understand something. You can't get married without a conversation. What you going to do? Go in front of the preacher and just raise your hand when he says, do you accept this woman? Do you accept this man? No, a conversation had to happen. You had to tell her you loved her. She had to tell you she loved you, and we want to spend the rest of our lives together. So a conversation had to happen. It's the birthplace for change. Nothing will change until you learn to talk about it. Listen to me. You can't get a job without a conversation. That's why they have the interview process. You go get a job, they don't just call you up and say, oh, brother, you got it. And they never met you. No, they want to have a conversation with you before they hire you on. And so Jesus says, Zacchaeus, come down. I must stay at your house. Zacchaeus accelerated into another gear when Jesus told him that. Because a leader goes before the crowd because he sees before the crowd. So what are you doing to accelerate your pace and to see before others see? Or are you just reacting to whatever happens? See, leaders see what others can't see and then go and they do something about it. Leaders go, they see what others can't see, and they go and they do something about it. Now, notice dealing with a moving target. You can't just aim at the target. You have to move just a little bit ahead of the target. Because why? They're going to run into it. And so you just aim just a little bit ahead of the target. See, Zacchaeus didn't run to where Jesus was. He ran to where Jesus was headed. He went where Jesus was going. And so Zacchaeus didn't just run in front. He also climbed up. He got up to a high level. So if you want to change things, you got to go up to a higher level. I stopped by to tell you that tonight. If you want to change things, you got to go up to a higher level. We are seated with Christ in heavenly places, not to be a big shot, but to get perspective. Say, when you're seated in heavenly places and you look down on earth and see a challenge, you see that problem, it seems small because you got a different perspective. But when you're on the ground looking up at that problem, it looks like a mountain before you. It's all in the perspective. It's all in the perspective. It's how you look at it. So when you're seated in heavenly places, you get the panoramic view. You know that panoramic view on your TV. Very nice view. But you get that panoramic view when you're seated in heavenly places. A complete view in every direction. So Zacchaeus got out on a limb. He was willing to risk something. Let me tell you something. If you're never willing to risk something, go out on a limb, you're not going to be very successful because you're always playing it safe. Now, to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, it costs something. You're going to have to risk something. You may have to risk Betty Boo. You may have to risk Tank Top Tony. You may have to risk some things that's in your life that got to go. And trust me, Jesus Christ is worth the risk. What are you doing to upgrade yourself and to get on a higher level? What are you doing? Not what somebody's doing for you. What are you doing to upgrade yourself and get on another level? I want you to remember this. Never get comfortable where you should be cautious. Never get comfortable where you should be cautious. When you're out on a limb, never make yourself comfortable. Always be on alert. Now, Jesus has gotten Zacchaeus' attention. And after he got his attention, you know, something amazing happened. People started hating on Zacchaeus after he got his attention. Because what? They said he's a sinner. He's a tax collector. We don't like tax collectors. But here this man is trying to get his heart right with Jesus Christ. And so people didn't like him before, and now they don't like him now. Even though he's trying to get his heart right with Jesus Christ. Can you imagine that? Don't you be one of those people. And so I want you to hear this with spiritual ears now. When God has put an anointing on your life, your presence will bring the devil out in people. When God has put an anointing on your life, your presence will bring the devil out in people. You walk into a room and people just don't like you. You haven't done anything. It's just the anointing on your life that the enemy doesn't like. Remember this. The devil doesn't manifest until the anointing walks in. The devil does not manifest until the anointing walks in. 3 things, and then I'm going to let you go. God sees you no matter where you are. He sees you when you are the worst sinner. He sees you when you are the greatest saint. He sees you wherever you are. He knows you. You may not know him, but he knows you. So our kids didn't know Jesus, but Jesus knew him. He wants you. How do you know he wants you? Because he's coming to your house. So he wants you. Is he coming to your house? When Jesus wants to come to your house, he'll make a connection. And don't you lose your connection. Don't you do it. Matthew 11:29 says this. And let me tell you one more thing. Jesus still wants you. Even with all your issues, because he knows all your issues. And he still wants you. Matthew 11:29, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. For I am meek and lowly in heart, he says, and you shall find rest unto your souls. Whenever you see the word yoke, it means partnership. It means we're going to do something together. We're going to have a joint venture. It's what the Lord is trying to tell you. So it is better for you to find out where Jesus is working and for you to help him in his work. Better for you to find out where Jesus is working and for you to help him in his work than for you to create your own mission and then ask him to bless it. Find out where Christ is working. You become what you behold. You become what you behold. Behold Jesus Christ. My question tonight, how do you see yourself? How do you see yourself? When people look at you, what image do they see? When people look at you, what image do they see? They ought to be able to see Jesus in you. How do you see yourself? I'm Elder R.W. Davis, Married to Power, Facebook, 365, Always Pray, YouTube. God bless you.